And could you share a little bit about how you've handled it in 3rd grade?
I have been very fortunate because I can just cross the hall into Lisa's room and observe it anytime. When they're doing reading, I'll pop over. And so we started it in our room and looked at it more. We used that word. 2 things we worked on was transitions, getting to our spot quickly, and then they'll even say, we're working on transitions so that we can read. And then uninterrupted. This is our uninterrupted reading time, meaning I can't lean over and ask my friend something about their book or throw things at them or whatever. I have noticed the biggest difference from last year when I took, we did the book clubs and everything else. I wouldn't have kids begging to read. Now they're reading books of interest, and I get, we have to be done already? I'm not done yet. And then they'll come in, I read 60 minutes last night. I took this book that I was working on home, you know, so they're carrying it over into the home environment, which I think is just phenomenal. And then I had a little guy who was living proof of the fact that giving him this time to read has been great, and working more one-on-one instead of whole group. Was reading, barely reading when he came in, and is now pretty close to grade level. So it's just shocking. He shocks me every day. So I've just been really pleased with that. Something I added, which is a little different, it's not in here other than, I think I've become a reflection queen this year. I'd like the kids to have that time to reflect, so we're doing it in writing, we're doing it when we have friendship problems, and we're doing it in reading. I left my one that I have it saved on at home, but just samples. So when we're all done, once a week, I give them a reflections sheet, and it's usually just a half a thing, and it would be, for the reading one, what would you be doing, or what were you doing as a reader this week? You know, what strategy? How can I help you when we conference together? Is there anything in particular you want to work on? So then they would have to list that, so that when I pull them, I can then, it focuses me a little bit more on where they're having difficulty. And we've been able to talk through, I pull their sheet right out, and we talk through some specific areas. And that has been amazing to carry it across the curriculum, so we can focus that time a little more. So that's kind of what it works really well. I have a copy, so thank you. I'll share.
Thanks, Anne. And Lynn, if you could just talk a little bit about what you've done in your room.
Yeah. One of the things that helped me organize a little bit, and I too am willing to share if anybody would like a copy of this, I just set up a daily 5 sheet, my checkoff sheet I call it, and all of my children have clipboards, and they keep this sheet on their clipboard. And so typically we'll start off with a little mini lesson in reading, and then it's like, okay, time to go back and head to your desk, find your clipboard, and we usually pull that out first. Actually, before we go to the mini lesson, I like to pull out the clipboard and I like to say, okay, let's take a look. You know, yesterday was Monday. How did you do? Did you do read to self? Do you have your writing checked off? Because with 2nd graders, they can lose their clipboards, they lose their sheets, they lose, you know, their days. And so at any rate, we will usually do that first and talk about yesterday. Then we move to the carpet, we have our mini lesson, and then we release and where, you know, what do you need to do? Now lately we've been doing boot camp, so we've been reading to self in order first, separately, and we haven't been keeping that as a separate choice other than like I said to the kids today, we only had 20 minutes of reading, so I said, okay, you know, mark that down on your little note, and if you choose to go back to read to self, then go ahead so you can finish up and get your flag. So I've been finding this really helpful in keeping, and then they turn them in. And this is a really good red flag too for those students who are not getting the stuff done. And we pull those kids aside and talk to them and make sure we understand why. The other thing, this was an idea that Lisa had gotten off a pro teacher, the bulletin board, which I believe in the book is listed as the cafe board. In lower L, we talked about the fact that lower L students don't really relate to the word cafe, but if we change the letters around to face, that's something they do relate to, they know that word. And so that's what I put up on my bulletin board, and we list our strategies under there. And so that's been working well too.
And that has to do with the next book that we have, the
Right.
second book that talks about the cafe.
And that's where we usually post, like when we're doing our mini lessons, we write it on a strip and then post that up on the bulletin board. So
I think one of the biggest things about getting started with Read to Celebrate to someone is understanding that you have to start small. How many minutes were they able to sustain at the beginning? Would you say, Sarah?
5 minutes.
5 minutes?
It was seconds.
Yeah.
Seconds for you?
yeah,
At first.
Oh yeah, it was right. They couldn't even sit down at first.
Yeah.
right.
Ring, 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 ring. That's to make sure I was like, what's going on?
I had a quiet little frog that croaked. She's like, I just hear this. My frog just croaked and croaked.
Yeah. And you know, it might be a little different from mid-year and upper L. They could be able to sustain that a little bit longer time. But, you know, kindergarten, I think in the book it says like 35 seconds is the first time for kindergarten. So, you know, I think it's important to realize that that time is going to be small in the beginning, but it's so exciting to hear the results
Right.
and what you're saying.
And those graphing sheets helped a lot.
Yeah.
Because once they got, you know, they wanted to beat themselves the next day. It's like, well, yeah, we can do it for 10 today, you know, so that worked well.